My name is Josephine Myers, 32 years old, currently living in Santa Fe, New Mexico. A month ago, my grandfather, Walter, passed away after nearly a year battling heart disease. He was the only person in the family who truly believed in me and guided me until the very end. I thought the funeral would be a moment for the family to set aside our differences and honor the man who built an entire business empire from nothing. But less than 2 days after the service, my mother, Hooray, called me with a voice as cold as steel. "We need to meet. It's about your grandfather's assets." I knew exactly what was coming. My mother, Walter's only daughter, had never understood the value of hard work. While he poured his life into building Myers Auto Pro, a chain of auto repair shops across the Southwest, she lived off short marriages, credit cards, and his reluctant generosity. 3 days later, I received an email from my grandfather's attorney, Mr. Harris, notifying me of the will reading. I didn't expect anything, but I still showed up on time in that familiar mahogany-paneled room that smelled of old paper and leather. Sitting beside me were my mother, my two cousins, Elliot and Vanessa, and my mother's third husband, Robert. Mr. Harris began calmly listing small gifts my grandfather left to close friends, longtime employees, and a small donation to an animal charity, all completely in character for him. But then he looked up, directly at me, and read, "To my granddaughter, Josephine Lee Myers. I leave the remainder of my estate, including all business holdings, financial investments, real estate, and personal belongings, with the exception of items specifically gifted above." The room fell into a breathless silence. I couldn't breathe. I had assumed the assets would be split, or that my mother at the very least would be the primary heir. But the entire estate? All 18 garages? The properties in Albuquerque, Tucson, and that undeveloped land in Utah? I hadn't even reacted before my mother slammed her hand on the table. "Impossible," he was confused. "Read it again." Mr. Harris adjusted his glasses calmly. "Mrs. Lorraine, this will was updated 6 months before Mr. Walter's passing. It is legally valid and was signed in sound mind." Vanessa, always the favored child, broke into tears. "There's no way he would do this to us. We're family." Elliot, usually quiet, just glanced at me and shook his head. Robert gripped his briefcase tightly, lips pressed into a line. I sat there, trying to remain composed. Inside, I was reeling, but part of me understood. This was the result of years he'd spent watching me work hard, never ask, never beg. I remembered those evenings when he called me into the main garage, handed me profit reports, and asked, "If we're down 12% this month, what's the first cost you'd cut?" It used to make me sweat, but he always nodded in approval when I gave practical, no-nonsense answers. I remembered him saying once while eating at a roadside burger joint, "Assets are tools, not trophies. Whoever knows how to use them wisely, that's who should hold them." No one else in that room understood, except me. As I left the law office, my mother cornered me in the parking lot. "This isn't over, Josie. I'm not letting this slide." I looked at her, not with anger, just with regret. "I didn't take anything. I'm just honoring his wishes." She scoffed. "And what's the word of a dying old man worth anyway?" I clenched my fist, but said nothing back. 3 days after the will reading, I received a text from my cousin Vanessa. "This Saturday night, the whole family's getting together at Uncle Greg's. Mom says you absolutely have to come, no skipping." The wording was short, but the trap reeked from miles away. I knew this family gathering wasn't going to be a friendly dinner. With my mother, Lorraine, no dinner ever was. Every meal was a stage, and this time, she was clearly the director of a scene, designed to corner me and pressure me into handing over what she still believed rightfully belonged to her. Despite my doubts, I went. I didn't hide. I didn't sneak around. That was one of Grandpa Walter's most important lessons. You don't need to make noise, but never back down. I arrived at Uncle Greg's house at exactly 7 p.m. sharp. Punctuality as a test. The house sat quietly at the end of a cul-de-sac in a quiet Flagstaff suburb. As a child, it had been the spot for Thanksgiving dinners, but tonight it felt more like stepping into a boardroom where I hadn't been invited. The moment the door opened, the air changed. The lighting was dimmed unnaturally low, scented candles were overbearing, and every pair of eyes was already locked on me. In the living room sat my mother, Robert, her husband, Vanessa, Uncle Greg, and a man in a gray suit with slicked back hair and a leather briefcase. No one had to tell me who he was. By the way he looked at me, assessing, calculating, I knew this wasn't some family friend. My mother smiled, the kind of smile real estate agents wear to sell foreclosures. Josephine, you made it. Right on time. This is Mr. Caldwell, our family's legal advisor. I walked in, not sitting yet. I simply nodded. Since when does this family have a legal advisor, Mom? Since you decided to keep what doesn't belong to you, she said, still sweet but with an unmistakable blade at the end. I took the only open seat, a stiff wooden chair, noticeably distant from the coffee table, and set my bag beside it. Let's get to the point. Is this supposed to be reconciliation, or are we staging a private courtroom? Mr. Caldwell spoke, deep voice measured and clear. We're hoping for a reasonable negotiation. Recent developments have clearly disrupted the family. Josephine's inheritance of the entire estate could have legal consequences, particularly if there's any suspicion regarding the validity of the will. I raised an eyebrow, keeping my tone neutral. Walter drafted his will while fully lucid. 2 doctors confirmed it. Attorney Harris supervised it. Every document is in order. What's the suspicion? My mother leaned back, arms crossed. Don't kid yourself, Josie. You stayed by his side every day, whispered to him. He was vulnerable. He always spoiled you. Vanessa cut in. I just don't believe he would cut out his own daughter and give everything to you. It's not fair. I turned to her, staring straight into her eyes. Then why weren't you there when he was hospitalized, when he needed someone to review his finances, when he forgot his bank password, or when he asked me to co-sign the lease extension for the El Paso garage? Silence fell over the room. Mr. Caldwell quickly pulled a document from his case. We've prepared a transfer proposal. Not of everything. The family is merely asking Josephine to return the company ownership and investment portfolio. In exchange, she may keep the Tucson properties and a fixed financial sum. Mom nodded like she was offering me a gift. Everyone deserves their fair share. He didn't build it for one person. I reached into my bag and pulled out a certified copy of the will, along with supporting documentation from Attorney Harris. No one here understands Grandpa's wishes better than I do. Not one of you heard him say, assets belong to those who respect them. I didn't beg, I didn't steal, I was chosen, and I'm not signing anything. Mom slammed her palm on the table. Don't act like you're the only one who understood him. You have my blood, and I won't let you destroy this family. I stood, voice cold as stone. Nothing's being destroyed. This family rotted long ago. Grandpa just finally had the strength to cut out the decay. Goodbye. I left Uncle Greg's house that night into the bitter cold of Flagstaff, but inside me, a fire was raging. I didn't feel sadness. I felt anger. Not because they wanted Grandpa's assets, but because they dared to twist the memory of the one man I respected most in this world. Back in my small apartment in Santa Fe, I opened the safe Walter had left me during our final private meeting. Inside was a folder he had called The Mirror of Truth. I had never dared to open it before, partly out of respect, partly because I wasn't ready to face what I'd been ignoring for years. That night I opened it. Inside was a brown, leather-bound notebook, filled with his neat, deliberate handwriting. The first pages were records of monthly transfers to my mother, Lorraine, dating back to 2005. I traced my fingers down the columns, each entry annotated with painful clarity. March 2010, $7,500 to Lorraine, said it was for Vanessa's tuition, actually, receipt from jewelry store in Scottsdale. August 2014, $12,000, claimed it was for roof repairs. Later spotted vacationing in Mexico with Robert. November 2017, $9,000, said it was for Elliot's medical bills, found photo from wedding party in Las Vegas. There were at least 37 suspicious entries, totaling nearly $400,000 over 15 years. I felt like I'd swallowed ice, not from the numbers, but from the audacity. She'd taken money under the guise of family, children, responsibility, only to fuel a lifestyle built on vanity and self-indulgence. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my mother's Instagram, the one filled with simple but fulfilling life posts. One photo from November 17th caught my eye. She was standing outside a luxury spa in Sedona, captioned, "Renewing my soul so I can keep loving deeply. Blessed self-care." I flipped back to Grandpa's notes from that same day. $15,000, Lorraine cried over the phone. Said Elliot was in a car accident and couldn't afford hospital bills. Wired immediately. There had been no accident, I was sure of it. I kept digging into Vanessa's old posts. One photo from 2016 showed the two of them beaming on a yacht in Miami. Grandpa's entry at the same time. $20,000, Vanessa diagnosed with depression, needs extended leave. Lorraine requests financial support. I printed every photo, captured every caption, and cross-referenced every transaction from the journal. The deeper I went, the more disturbing it became. Not just deceit, but an entire ecosystem of manipulation built on guilt, tears, and performative affection. I brought copies of the materials to my attorney, Helen Barker, a sharp, efficient woman known for handling estate disputes across New Mexico. After reading through the journal, she looked up, voice calm but firm. "You're holding a gold mine. If they sue, this is your shield. If they keep pressing, this is your sword. And if you want the truth to come out, this is your spotlight." I nodded. "I'm not out for revenge. I just want them to stop." Helen closed the book. Sometimes, to make people stop, you have to take the first step forward. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Elliot. I didn't realize it had gotten this serious. "I was just doing what Mom told me. I'm sorry." I didn't reply right away, but I knew one thing for sure. The next battle wouldn't be over passive-aggressive dinners or fake smiles. It would be fought with evidence, logic, and the kind of unrelenting truth that forces those who hide behind family to face the damage they've done. I turned off the lights, but my mind had never been clearer. The message came in on a cold Monday morning, just as I stepped out of a meeting with the management team at our Albuquerque garage branch. A name I didn't recognize flashed across the screen. Vanessa Legal Advisory Group. "Dear Miss Josephine Myers, we represent Lorraine Beckett and her family members in requesting that you immediately cease any interference with jointly owned assets pending legal proceedings. You are being accused of exploiting an elderly person with diminished mental capacity for personal financial gain through will manipulation." I read it 3 times. Each time the words sank deeper into my chest. I sat in my car for nearly half an hour, not because I was shocked, because I was furious. They had officially crossed the line. This wasn't family pressure anymore. This was war. A legal assault on my integrity and my grandfather's legacy. I immediately forwarded the email to Helen, my turn. Less than 10 minutes later, she called. "They're not listed with the New Mexico Bar Association. Vanessa Legal Advisory Group is an advisory firm, not a law firm. They don't have the authority to represent anyone in civil court." So they're scamming me? Not quite. It's what we call legally flavored intimidation. If you respond or sign anything they attach, they could use it as implicit admission in future proceedings. I'm not signing a damn thing, but Helen, they're accusing me of manipulating my grandfather when he was dying. Helen paused, then spoke slowly. "We need to strike first. And I know exactly how." 3 days later, Helen and I met with Dr. Everett, my grandfather Walter's primary care physician. A man in his 60s with a lean build and steady professional demeanor, he had cared for Grandpa for nearly 8 years. After we explained why we were there, he nodded and said firmly, "I signed an official statement certifying that Walter was of sound mind at the time he amended his will. I'm fully prepared to testify in court if needed." "Are there any recordings or written notes?" Helen asked. "Yes. As part of our clinic policy, we record legal advisory sessions with patient consent. Walter gave explicit permission." I nearly shot up from my seat. "So, He stated clearly why he chose me in his will, crystal clear and adamant. We requested copies of the recording and his final 6 months of medical documentation. The puzzle pieces were snapping into place. If my mother intended to accuse me of coercing a frail old man into changing his will, I would show her I didn't need to coerce anyone. He made his choice, and he predicted this would happen. Helen advised me to stay silent in the media and ignore all calls, messages, or emails from Vanessa Legal Advisory Group. Meanwhile, she would send a cease and desist demanding they stop the intimidation or face a countersuit for defamation and harassment. But I underestimated them. That evening, a blog post surfaced, shared on Facebook by one of my mother's old friends. Ambitious granddaughter pressures dying grandfather into will change, a modern American family tragedy. The post never mentioned my name, but every detail was eerily accurate. A garage owner in Santa Fe, my age, my profession, a smear campaign, indirect but surgical. The comments came fast. Today's kids just wait for the old folks to die and snatch their money. It's so easy to manipulate the elderly, it's heartbreaking. I shut off my phone, but it was too late. Old friends, coworkers, they were messaging me, not accusing, but asking, softly, indirectly, "Is it true?" I sat in the dark and stared at the ring Grandpa gave me when I graduated college. Inside, it was engraved. Earned it. I whispered, "Grandpa, they're trampling everything you built. But I won't back down." The next morning, Helen sent her first letter to their side. No threats, just a 12-minute audio file, Walter's recorded conversation with Dr. Everett, where he explained why he left nothing to Lorraine and why he believed I was the only person with the integrity and strength to protect what he'd built. At the end, he said, "I'm not leaving money. I'm leaving values, and I know Josephine will understand that." Saturday afternoon, I was going over the books at the Santa Fe garage branch when I heard the doorbell. It was rare for anyone to come through the front glass door at this hour, but when I looked up, I froze. Standing there in the late afternoon sun was Elliot. My 19-year-old cousin, who had sat quietly during the previous family meeting as if none of it concerned him, was now standing in front of me, eyes sunken, a small, frayed backpack on his shoulder. I opened the door. "What's going on, Elliot?" He swallowed hard, his voice rough from either exhaustion or too much thinking. "I don't know where else to go." I stepped aside, motioning him in. I made him a cup of ginger tea and sat on the plastic chair next to the desk. He didn't speak right away, just sat in silence, eyes fixed on the cold tile floor, hands clasped tightly. "You already know, don't you?" he asked without looking at me. "Know what?" About the fake hospital bills? About that so-called scholarship last year? About how Mom borrowed money from Grandpa to open a clothing store and then transferred it to Uncle Robert? I didn't answer. He nodded, like confirming what he'd just admitted aloud for the first time. "I overheard her on the phone last night. She told Vanessa that if she couldn't squeeze money from you, then everything planned since February would fall apart. She also said Grandpa's passing was well-timed, but not quite convenient. You hear that? She called his death a strategic drop." I clenched the hand resting on my lap. "Did you say anything back?" I just asked if she really meant it, and she said people like Grandpa Walter don't need anyone's pity. Elliot looked up. For the first time, I saw it in his eyes. No longer the dazed kid coddled by his mother, but someone waking up, hurting, but real. "Sis, I want to leave home. I can't live there anymore. But I don't have anything, no money for rent, no idea where to start. Could you—" He hesitated, awkwardly. "Let me stay with you for a few weeks? So I can find work and maybe, if possible, learn how to work with you?" I went quiet for a moment. I had prepared for every move, facing Mom, Robert, Vanessa, but I never imagined Elliot would leave them. I smiled and stood up. "My apartment has a spare room, but if you stay, no lying around playing on your phone all day." He gave a soft, grateful smile. "I'll get up earlier than you." That evening, I brought Elliot home. The apartment had only 2 bedrooms, but it was warm enough to rebuild from. I laid a thick blanket on the spare bed, and he helped me sort through Grandpa's old books. Elliot adapted quickly. He got a job as a garage assistant while I taught him how to process orders, track inventory, and handle customer complaints. He didn't whine. On the contrary, he paid close attention, asked detailed questions about each step, and started noting down customer preferences. One day, after we locked up the garage, he turned to me. Do you remember how Grandpa always reminded us to check the A/C system before May? I looked at him, a bit surprised. How do you remember that? Because every April he cursed at those air filters. We both burst out laughing, laughed in the middle of tension, while rumors still spread online like a stubborn fever. I started to see what Grandpa Walter had once seen in Elliot: keen observation, thoughtful caution, and a growing sense of gratitude in the boy once cast as the default heir. A week later, Mom texted Elliot, "If you go back there, I'll never forgive you. Remember who paid for your schooling." Elliot showed me the message. I asked, "Do you want to respond?" He shook his head. "I'll respond by living differently." I held his hand. For the first time, I truly felt I wasn't alone anymore. 4 days after Elliot moved in with me, Helen sent me an email with the subject line, "Time to Strike Back." She attached a file of more than 80 pages, the complete legal evidence confirming that Grandpa Walter's will was valid. Included were a copy of the recorded conversation between him and Dr. Everett, his regular psychiatric evaluations from the last 6 months of his life, and signed statements from the 2 witnesses present during the will update. Everything was airtight, impossible to poke holes in. That evening, Helen, Elliot, and I sat in the temporary office of the attorney, discussing strategy. Helen laid the files out in front of us, marking each with yellow sticky notes. "We'll send them a copy. No threats, no harsh language, just a cold, clear, and undeniable truth." Elliot glanced over the document list, his eyes widening when he saw a page bearing his own mother, Lorraine's signature from the 2020 financial reconciliation, which clearly stated she had received $25,000 from Grandpa Walter for personal use, non-refundable. Helen pointed at that page. "If they keep accusing you of manipulating Mr. Walter, I won't just counter. I'll file a countersuit for intentional falsification of evidence and estate harassment." I nodded, my voice firm. "Send it." 3 days later, Helen received a reply from the Vanessa Legal Advisory Group, which had now renamed itself Beckett Family Advocacy Services, likely to dodge association with the previous case. I was reviewing the garage camera footage that afternoon when my phone buzzed. "Josephine," Helen said briskly, "they're out of moves." "What do you mean?" "We just received a withdrawal letter, unconditional. They realized the recording, medical documentation, and financial log would backfire on every single one of their claims." I took my hands off the keyboard. It didn't feel like a win, more like a cold kind of relief. No apology, no admission of wrongdoing, just silence as a way of retreat. Elliot was wiping down the tool shelves outside the garage. I stepped out and simply said, "They withdrew the claim." He set the rag down, looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "So, it's really over." I didn't answer right away. I looked toward the hazy mountain range of New Mexico where Grandpa Walter had taken me camping one last time, 3 months before he passed. No. But it's the first step. That night, Helen and I sat down to go over the next steps. Final confirmation of the will's validity with the local court. Submit legal transfer documents for all assets to my name, including the Myers Auto Pro garage chain, investment portfolio, and real estate in Flagstaff, Tucson, and Las Cruces. Establish a new trust for Elliot as part of the succession plan Grandpa Walter had once suggested. After Helen left, I sat alone in the living room. Elliot was already asleep, his old backpack still hanging beside the chair, like a quiet reminder that not everyone chooses the right path from the start, but everyone deserves a chance to make things right. Around 9 p.m., my phone rang. It was Vanessa. I didn't pick up. But then a text came through. "Josephine, I know what Mom did went too far. I don't know what to say, just, if you ever want to talk, I'll be here. Even just to listen. I read the message over and over. No excuses, no justifications, just a very human silence. I haven't replied yet, but I know this. There will come a time when I won't need to fight anymore. I'll just need to talk. Grandpa once said, justice doesn't always come from a courtroom. It comes from how you protect what's right, even when no one else will. I looked up at the photo of him on the wall, his smile still calm, his gaze just as steady as ever. Spring that year, I officially became the owner of the Myers Auto Pro garage chain, the name tied to Grandpa Walter's entire life. But instead of throwing a celebration or issuing a press release, I spent my first morning as owner sitting down with the longtime technicians at the original Santa Fe garage. I didn't sit at a big table, didn't wear a suit, didn't give a rehearsed speech. I brought a stack of note cards, a large thermos of coffee, and 2 apple turnovers, just like Grandpa used to do when it was time for a real talk. We're going to make changes, I said, looking each person in the eye, but not to tear down what Grandpa Walter built. We're going to help it last another 50 years, stronger, fairer, and smarter. The first garage I restructured was the Las Cruces branch, which had been neglected for 2 years because the previous manager chased short-term profits. I overhauled the management software, expanded the electric vehicle service zone, and hired 3 young workers from a local trade school. I also set a new rule. All technicians must receive regular training in clean automotive technology. I thought you were just taking over, not expanding, Elliot asked when he saw me reviewing plans for a new recycled parts showroom. I smiled, sliding the file stack toward him. Grandpa didn't leave us a legacy to keep behind glass. At the same time, I began planning the Walter L. Myers Foundation, a nonprofit to fund scholarships for mechanical engineering students, especially those from working-class or low-income backgrounds. The first name I put on the tuition support list was Elliot. You serious? He asked, hesitant. I just started learning how to organize spreadsheets. I'm not some genius like you. I don't need a genius, I said firmly. I need someone who owns their mistakes and makes them right. And more importantly, you've got heart. Elliot applied to the University of New Mexico, majoring in small business administration, with a minor in sustainable development and automotive engineering. In his personal essay, he wrote about Grandpa Walter, about the time he thought everything he received was guaranteed, until he learned the truth and chose a different path. He was accepted for the fall semester. I continued visiting every garage location, not just to audit finances, but to meet every employee. I listened to David, a veteran mechanic, talk about his chronic back pain after standing 10 hours a day. I called the insurance company to renegotiate healthcare terms. I asked Jennifer, a young accountant in the Tucson branch, if she was being paid fairly for her multiple roles, and when she hesitated, I immediately ordered a full payroll audit. Slowly, I felt a new energy in every shop, not from fresh paint on the walls, but from the fact that people no longer felt like nameless cogs. One afternoon in June, I received a handwritten letter from a student in Gallup, New Mexico, the first scholarship recipient from the Walter Fund. He wrote, "Thank you for believing that a mechanic's kid and a bakery worker's son can become an engineer. I won't let you down." I folded the letter and placed it beside a photo of Grandpa, standing in front of his first garage in 1979, his smile beaming, his hands covered in grease. I understood then I wasn't just running a garage chain. I was preserving a way of life, where labor wasn't just about survival, but about building value for an entire generation. And somewhere in rebuilding from the wreckage, I realized a true legacy isn't the assets we inherit. It's how we use them to build something better, for those who deserve it and for those who never got the chance. One morning in mid-August, I was reviewing the quarterly reports for 3 new branches when the doorbell rang. Elliot was still asleep, so I got up to answer it. Standing there was Vanessa, no heavy makeup, hair pulled back in a hurry, holding a large envelope. I hadn't seen my cousin look this unpolished since she was 16. "Do you have a few minutes?" she asked, her voice quieter than I remembered. "Come in," I replied, cautious but not unkind. Vanessa sat on the leather chair in the living room. Her eyes scanned the room before landing on the photo of me and Grandpa Walter standing outside the Santa Fe garage, taken the day I graduated college. I used to think you were just the doll Grandpa made to spite my mom, she said. I stayed silent. Vanessa opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of papers, a handwritten apology letter, documents formally withdrawing all legal complaints, and, most surprising of all, an application to a community counseling program in Flagstaff. Clearly signed, Lorraine Beckett. I don't know if you'll believe me, Vanessa said, but Mom started therapy 2 weeks ago. Not consistently, but she's going, voluntarily. I looked at her. In her eyes, something had cracked open. Old pride, stubborn certainty, and what was left looked like honest exhaustion. I didn't come to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know I understand what happened, and I'm sorry for staying silent for so long. I gave a small nod, not forgiveness, but an open door. If your mom is really trying to change, let her see it through. But don't expect me to return to a family that doesn't exist anymore. Vanessa lowered her head. I understand. When she left, I didn't walk her to the door, but I kept the folder, and for the first time, I didn't feel angry. A week later, I received a handwritten letter from my mother. No pleading, no justification, just 4 lines. Josephine, thank you for preserving what we couldn't. If someday you want to talk, I'll be here. Mom. After reading it, Helen simply shrugged. You don't have to respond, but I think you will. I didn't write back right away, but I asked Helen to schedule my mother an appointment with Dr. Everett, not for evaluation, but for something real. Healing, not excuses. Elliot noticed the shift before anyone else. She texted me yesterday, he said, didn't mention money, just asked if I was eating enough. What did you say? I sent her a photo of the sandwich you made that morning, and I wrote, I'm doing fine thanks to my sister. I smiled. For the first time, the word sister meant something more than biology. It meant showing up. That fall, the Walter L. Myers Foundation held its first scholarship ceremony at a technical college in Las Vegas. 12 students, most from small towns like I was, walked across the stage to accept their awards. Toward the back row, I spotted a familiar silhouette, dark hair, slender figure, sitting quietly. My mother. No announcement, no invitation, but she came, sat through the entire ceremony, then quietly left before I could reach her. Helen gently tapped my shoulder. She's trying, in her own way. I nodded. My family wasn't healed. There were still things unsaid, wounds untouched. But at least greed was no longer the driving force, and in the space those wounds had left behind, something else was growing. Accountability, honesty, and a quiet flicker of hope. We weren't going back to what we were, but we were learning to move forward. One small step, one repaired thread, one genuine effort at a time. And for me, that was enough to begin. Josephine's story proves that legacy isn't just something to divide, it's something to uphold. She didn't just protect what her grandfather left behind. She turned it into a foundation for positive change, from reviving a business, supporting the community, to helping heal the fractures within her family. In a world where greed often overshadows kinship, Josephine chose the harder path, standing firm, choosing integrity, and creating hope through action, not words. What do you think of Josephine's choices and the journey she took? Would you have done the same in her shoes? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family and life.